We are so excited to welcome our guest today, Iron County Superintendent Shannon Dulaney. Dr. Shannon Dulaney has been a public school teacher, principal, and district administrator. The bulk of her career in education has been spent working with at-risk students and the teachers and administrators who serve them. Shannon completed her undergraduate degree in English and music at California State University, Fullerton in 1994, and received a Master of Education degree and her administrative endorsement from Southern Utah University in 2000. She graduated with her doctorate degree in curriculum and instruction from the Utah State University in 2010. She loves to travel, read, play the piano, and crochet in her spare time. Please join me in welcoming Shannon Dulaney. How are you today, Shannon?
Sorry.
Oh, you're good, you're good.
I did push it, just didn't unmute. Anyway, thank you for the opportunity. I appreciate being here and being able to visit with you.
Oh, so glad to have you. So my first question is, Shannon, is where do you ever get spare time? On that last part where you say you play the piano, crochet in your spare time, I'm like, when do you have spare time?
Usually in the evenings. I'm one that just can't sit and watch TV, so I'll usually crochet in the evenings if I'm not in meetings. And playing the piano, that usually happens on the weekend, mostly on Sundays, but it's a good release and I enjoy it.
Oh, that's awesome. So I just had a couple of questions before we get started on our book review. I just wanted you to give us some of your background. Where did you grow up?
So I grew up mostly in Southern California, about 4 years in Northern California in Lompoc, but other than that, in Southern California in the Orange County area, mostly. When I was a junior in high school, my parents moved to Norco, California, which is in the Riverside community. And that's where I graduated from high school and got married soon after high school graduation. And that's where my husband Tim and I raised our kids, was in the Riverside County area in Moreno Valley. Moved to Cedar City in 1997 after I'd been teaching about 4 years in California. Just took a leap of faith. My daughter had been going to school at SUU and we fell in love with the community. My husband retired and this is where we came. And then I started my teaching career here in Iron County in December of that same year.
Oh, wow. That's awesome. So what got you interested in school administration? Like what led you down that path?
That's a really interesting question. I remember touring my first high school job in California with my principal. And one of the things that I said as we went through the campus and he was dealing with issues is, I don't know who in their right mind would want to be a high school principal. Well, you know, never say never. And when we moved here to Cedar City, my career took an interesting detour or change, and actually changed for good. My first teaching position was with a boys group home out in the valley. That was the only teaching position that was open when we moved here, and I was desperate to get back with kids. And working with those at-risk students, those boys in that home, really did change my perspective in regards to education and who needed that education and needed that service by educators. And so as I did that, I started to lead some groups in the district with at-risk kids, and became really interested in that ability to have a more global ability to make change that sometimes you can't always have in a teaching position, and became interested in leadership. And that's when I went back to school, went to SUU and got my administrative endorsement and started working with the leadership in youth in custody in Iron County, which then led to special programs, which then led to my interest in getting a doctorate degree and going even further, and then coming back as superintendent 3 years later. So I love what I do. I love being an administrator, and I love serving teachers, educators, which ultimately affects what happens in the classroom.
Oh, it does. So Shannon, that's an incredible journey. And so now I can see even more so why you picked the book that we're going to be discussing today. That makes great sense. So I love the book that you picked. I have it right here. We're going to be discussing Educated by Tara Westover. This was an amazing book. I read this myself a couple of years ago when it first came out, and oh my goodness, what a story. And a fun fact I learned about it today is that since May of 2020, this book has been in the top 10 New York Times bestselling for 2 years straight. Now, what was that, like 114 weeks in the top 10 on New York Times bestseller list? I mean, that's just incredible. That is what an amazing book this is. So I'm just going to read a little synopsis of it to kind of get a little groundwork for maybe some of those that don't know what this is about. But this is a memoir. So basically, as a memoir based on a true story, or, you know, as memoirs, it's always a little bit, it's how they remember it, you know. But this is such an amazing memoir story about a girl in rural Idaho. And to go into that synopsis, Tara Westover was 17 the first time she set foot in a classroom. Born to survivalists in the mountains of Idaho, she prepared for the end of the world by stockpiling home-canned peaches and sleeping with her head for the hills bag. Educated is an account of the struggle for self-invention. It is a tale of fierce family loyalty and of the grief that comes with severing the closest of ties. With the acute insight that distinguishes all great writers, Westover has crafted a universal coming-of-age story that gets to the heart of what an education is and what it offers, the perspective to see one's life through new eyes and the will to change it. So Shannon, this book covers so much. It covers child neglect, domestic abuse. It covers survivalists, extremists in religion. I know some people, when they heard about this, because they were extremist Mormons, you know, there's extremists in all religions. And these people lived up in Idaho. I mean, you think Ruby Ridge,
right?
Like, you hear about that, that was just horrible. And then to hear about her struggle and anyway, basically how she became this amazing person through all of her struggles. So what part of this story resonated with you? Why did you decide to discuss this book today?
You know, I've got a plaque hanging on my wall in my office that says life isn't about finding yourself, it's about creating yourself. And I truly believe that that's one of the major themes of this book, of this memoir, is how Tara overcame so many obstacles. I mean, you talked about some of them, but with a tremendous amount of resilience. If ever there was a story about resilience, it is Tara Westover and her life. Her dad with mental health issues and the ups and downs and the roller coaster that came with that and all the issues it caused for their family. You know, none of us, I believe all of us have obstacles in our life, and all of us have family issues and things that are going on. And it's really wonderful to read a story about someone who has overcome those, and not an easy path or an easy journey. And I think that it gives hope. And I love that message of hope. As I've worked with at-risk kids and their families for almost 25 years now, that is always one message that I've been able to have a discussion with families about is, no matter what we're going through, and especially with their kids, no matter what the challenge is, if hope is there, then we survive and we're resilient, and we can make something out of our lives. So the story just really did resonate with me, and my experiences working with this type of student, this type of kiddo, and their families.
Mm-hmm. So I had a question with this Tara Westover story. You can read it and you just think, oh, this is just like once in a million. Things like this don't really happen, maybe in a little pocket there up in Idaho. But do you find from all of your work and everything you've done, is this a prevalent problem with children?
You know, and it's becoming more increasingly so. I know within my realm of working in Iron County School District, the student population has changed significantly. I've been here in Iron County since 1997, with, you know, except for that hiatus that I took there at BYU. But our students are dealing with more and more difficult kinds of situations that they perhaps would not have dealt with 20 years ago, or even 10 or 5 years ago. And so being prepared to meet kids where they are and to help them through those kinds of issues, to help them find that hope that I talked about, to teach resilience, along with the curriculum that we teach them is critical. Those essential skills are critical, more and more so because of what they're dealing with in their lives. And yes, we do have many students many children in Iron County that are dealing with similar situations that are told in this memoir by Terrace.
Mm. So I wonder, I think a lot of us live in these little boxes and we just think we go through our lives, we don't notice anything around us. Are there cues? Is there somewhere, I mean, as like a teacher and where you're at through your career, have you been able to pick up on that, the students that need help? I mean, I don't think they're really ones to ever ask, but do you ever clue into someone needing help?
Sure.
Are there ways to look for that?
Sure, and those cries for help or those indicators or for that kind of need are different, and they're manifested different depending upon the child and the circumstances and their own nature and who they are. They'll respond differently. It could be the quiet kid who sits in the back of the room and never says anything. You know, so behaviorally, there's no issue. But there are things that are happening inside that they're dealing with internally. So picking up on those kinds of cues, the kids that are overtly misbehaving in a classroom. Show me a kid that is misbehaving, and I'll show you a kid that is dealing with issues in regards to their home life or trauma that's happening in their lives. Almost 100% you'll find that. And so being able to, instead of deal with kids and those outbursts or those misbehaviors, is being able to dig deeper and find out what really is going on and addressing those behaviors in a very real way. We've had to hire licensed clinical social workers in our district because we have so many of those children that have those more intense needs. So yeah, there are different indicators, and we train our teachers to look for those kinds of things within their students. And then they consult with their multidisciplinary teams within the school that includes those social workers and counselors in order to get them the help that they need.
So is there any way to just, even not as a teacher, but maybe in your own neighborhood, is there a way to reach out to kids? I mean, obviously in this day and age, you can't really, you know, you're a little limited in some of the things that you can do, but what are some of the things that just as a concerned citizen or a neighbor where you can reach out and help some of these kids so that they can feel like they matter?
Right. And I think it is, it's especially helpful to consider your neighborhoods as communities within themselves. So you're not alone in reaching out and drawing upon the strengths of your neighbors and their families in order to meet the needs of students. We have a couple of students in our neighborhood that were by themselves without parents for quite a while, and I just saw those acts of service and love on their behalf from families within our neighborhood, taking meals and gifts at Christmas time and that kind of thing. So I think just being aware and not being not looking inward, but that outward perspective of the people that are around us and that we live within those neighborhoods.
Right. And I'm sure during this time too, through COVID-19 and quarantine, I think it's probably really big. Have you noticed, I mean, I know we're not in the school systems per se, but has that been a big problem that's come up with kids? Is that something that's being shown? I don't know if that's anything that you can really tell right now, maybe in the future, but have there been any cases brought up you think made it a little bit worse?
Yes, there have been anecdotal stories that have come my way of teachers reaching out to kids who are in the homes and don't have maybe the support because parents are needing to be gone into work every day, as well as those families who are now no longer employed. And so meeting their physical needs so that intellectual needs and emotional needs can be met as well. So we provide food, we provide breakfast and lunch for every kiddo here in Iron County between the age of 0 and 18. They can access those meals every single day, Monday through Friday, taking care of those basic needs as well. And I hear stories of gratitude coming from families. I've gotten multiple emails and Facebook messages from those families who have been truly appreciative of that support that has come their way during a very difficult time, and for some more difficult than others.
Nicole?
Oh, yes? Oh, sorry.
I'm sorry. I don't mean to interrupt. Can I ask a question?
You know, you can, but will you put it in the chat box, please?
And
we'll come back to
sure.
it. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, you're good. Okay, sorry. We will have a question and answer at the end. And yeah, just if you have questions, please put them in the chat box and we will ask Shannon those questions at the end. Thanks.
You made a really good point though, Nicole. We probably won't see some of the things, some of the issues that'll be manifested because of our current environment until years to come. Those things will be manifested. And so just being aware that we are in the situation we are in and having those who can help being made aware as well.
Yes, absolutely. So to go back to Tara Westover's journey, there's just a couple of things I'm going to just talk to you about, talking about the story, you know, and it's so interesting because right now we can really relate it to what's going on in the world. I mean, isn't it just crazy?
It is.
If you could have told me in January what the rest of the year would have looked like, I would have laughed. I would have laughed in your face and been like, yeah, sure. Yeah, try another one. But oh man, this whole year has just been one thing after another. All right. So in the book, going back to the Tara Westover story, what quote or passage from the book was your favorite? What was some of your favorite parts of that story that really stuck out to you?
Oh gosh, there are so many, and I don't really have any passages that are marked, but I think all of her narrative and all of her dialogue where she's talking about her family, her siblings, her parents, their natures, decisions that were made and how those decisions affected her life and her siblings' life for good or for bad or anything in between. So yeah, I don't know that I have a favorite passage, but I do. I did appreciate the story and the relatability of the story, because I think no matter who you are and no matter from what circumstances you come to the story with, you will relate and you will find to connect with.
Yeah. What aspects of Tara's journey do you most relate to? Just in your own, you have quite a journey getting to where you are.
Sure.
Where do you relate with her?
I think having been an educator now for 25 years, I think I related with how she got her education and what does education mean? Education just isn't what we get in a classroom with a professional and a teacher. Yes, that's a big part of it, but we know that we're educated in so many ways through our family experiences, experiences that we have with friends and colleagues. So what does education mean? And I think keeping that central to what we do as educators is critical, realizing that kids receive this education from experience, not just from the curriculum that we deliver within a classroom. And that's become more and more apparent as time moves forward. So that journey of becoming educated and learning from our environment, as well as from people who formally teach us, it all comes into play and makes us who we are and helps us to develop into who we are.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. Were there any gaps in Tara's story you wish she had filled in?
Well, that's a really good question. You know, I read it again over the last couple of weeks, and I must say that she did a really good job of going back and rereading what she had written, and then making inquiries to siblings and parents and others that she had in her life. This is how I remember the story. Can you fill in the gaps or help me to understand it better? So I think by her taking that kind of time out through the memoir to go back and fill in the gaps, that helped for me. So I didn't really have any questions as to things that were missing.
I thought that was so vital that she did that, because memory is a faulty thing.
Yes.
Especially when my kids fight. Oh, they're never in the wrong. It was the other kid. But then once you get down to the base of it, you can kind of see where it got started.
Exactly.
So I thought that I really appreciated that she did that, where she tried to go back through and say, hey, I wrote this, which was nice that she did keep a journal to say, hey, I wrote that. Is this really how it happened? Because I tell you, the older we get, our memories become foggy. And she's not that old. She's only, how old is she? 24 now?
I think she was 29 when she wrote 29. It. I think I remember that.
I was trying to remember what year. I know I should look and see on her
No,
thing.
it's okay.
1986 was when she was born. Okay, so what would that make her? How old is she in 86? Oh, I'm going to say she's 35
30,
now.
yeah, close to 35.
35. Okay, yeah. So, still in your 30s. Your 30s kind of start getting a little hazy.
Yeah, I know.
So Tara's pursuit of education often feels like a rebellion toward her family and upbringing. How does it differ from her other siblings' acts of rebellion, and how is it the same?
So the rebellion, yeah, it takes on different forms depending upon what she's dealing with. I think she hung in there a little longer. I think it was in her nature to do that. She wanted to feel comfortable with her surroundings. She wanted to understand what was going on, the perspective of her parents, the perspective of her siblings. And we know that our older siblings, those of us who have them, can sometimes make us question who we are and what our behaviors are. And I think each one of her siblings had a different influence on her life.
Mm-hmm.
So the one sibling, Tyler, who had the stutter, who was not a good fit for a survivalist family. His feelings were too tender and the emotions too close to the surface to be able to cope with the survivalist kind of attitude, the roughness of the circumstances and the environment. So from him, she learned to appreciate music, which then led to her discovery of a beautiful voice and talents that she didn't know she had. So that's just one example of that. And I think that discovery helped her to cope with her environment, that then led to her ability to then stick around and try to deal with her surroundings until it became apparent that she needed to move on.
Right. In child development, which I'm sure you've studied that on a very vast degree, have they found that in families, for me, I would think in a very dysfunctional family growing up, and you had, parents, especially Tara's parents, where you just watch that and you just think, how is her mom still married to her dad? How is that even still there? Why would she want anything to do with them? And yet they find that a lot of these kids have very, very strong ties to their families, to their dysfunctional families. And it's hard to break away. Why is that? Why do people have a really hard time breaking free from abuse or neglect? And even it gets repeated a lot through the generations even.
Sure. I think a lot of it has to do with what does it mean to love? What does it mean to be connected to other people and the security that you feel in that connection? So this is just Shannon Dulaney speaking. I'm not speaking from any kind of child development literature or research, but I truly believe that it's that connection, that human need that we have to be connected to others, that allows us to stick around, allows us to be resilient when dysfunctionality is all around it. I mean, you think about the things that she dealt with, from not being able to go to doctors to take care of medical issues, and how traumatic it was, when she took care of her brother whose jeans caught on fire and leg burnt, and knowing that that she had to cope in so many ways. I think there's strength that comes from that coping and from practicing that resiliency, and so you stick around because you have a love. Whether no matter what that dysfunction is, you have that connection to, and you don't want to lose that connection. And especially when you're younger, being able to see a pathway clear to remove yourself from that dysfunctionality is always difficult.
Right.
So that's,
I think it's amazing when they break the chain.
Yes, always. And the events that cause them, what are those final events, those kind of final ahas that they have that allow them to then move forward.
Growing up so far removed from the world in conventional education, Tara had many gaps in her knowledge of the world, including not understanding the meaning of Holocaust, which just blew my mind. I thought, how have you never heard of the Holocaust? Discuss how the moment when she realizes this gap impacted her. Are there any other significant knowledge gaps that you discovered in your own education journey?
Sure. Again, it comes with environment. The world that she knew was what her parents provided for her, what her siblings provided for her, her home life, whatever neighbors she had. And it's the same for all of us. So of course, not having a TV, not going to school formally, and being exposed to curriculum, exposed to history, it made sense to me. Okay, yeah, she's now discovered that she doesn't know what the Holocaust is, and now dealing with the reality of that. That's a really tough question to answer off the cuff, Nicole. But I think for me, my biggest aha came because I got married at a young age, was my knowledge gap about what it meant to establish a home, what it meant to become a parent. That was learn as you go.
Parenting is learn as you go. That's actually a great way to describe it.
Exactly. So my knowledge gap in holding a brand new baby, and okay, what the heck do I do? And those feelings of being overwhelmed that you're now responsible for this little human being.
Where's the learner's permit for this?
Exactly. Exactly. Dealing with a relationship, with your spouse, and all of their little idiosyncrasies that don't always match with yours. And of course, having commonalities in faith and that kind of thing always helps, but it's not always the answer. So knowledge gaps about family and what family means, and that your family is going to be different than the family perhaps that you grew up within. So that's the
very
closest
wise
thing I
words.
could come to
That's
in
good.
regards to gaps.
I have these conversations with my kids. You realize someday you're going to marry someone that is was not raised the way you were raised.
Exactly.
So there's a lot of similarities, but you're going to learn. You're going to have to figure out how to compromise and just learn together. Yes, exactly. Yes. Throughout the book, Westover works to challenge and sometimes dispels the truths that are presented to her by her father in order to make up her own mind about the world. Was there ever anyone in your life whose words you took to be true, but then later found yourself disagreeing? How do you know if something is true? Actually, that's pretty, you get told things growing up by people.
Sure. Of course, you have friends that try to tell you what's true and what's right, and
gender roles too.
And gender roles, and who you can be and who you can't be, and all of that. So yeah, I think we all deal with those kinds of, and it's all a part of our education, those kinds of things that we're taught and that we learn, that we then come to find out or question, because we are interdependent, but we're also dependent upon each other, and away from each other. So I don't know that I can think of anything specifically other than perhaps my education journey, and understanding what it meant to go to college. And
which amazes me, because you got married so young, right out of high school, that you did that. I mean, that is so amazing to me that you did that. Good for you.
It's helpful to have a very supportive husband and someone who's there to help take care of and pick up the slack, when you have to, your priorities change.
Like,
just
who
a bit.
needs a clean house? We'll be fine.
Well, and being able to let go of some of those things, that it's okay if the laundry piles up for a few days, as long as the kids are in clean clothes and the beds are clean and made. And anyway, it's okay to put some of those things aside for other things. And just realizing that I wanted my kids to go to college. And so my perspective when I got married was, someday I'll return to school. I've always wanted to be a teacher since fourth grade, since Mrs. Brown's fourth grade classroom. I wanted to be Mrs. Brown, and I wanted to get that education. So when I got married young, I had been accepted to BYU, but instead got married. I told my husband, one of these days, just expect it, I'm going to want to go back to school. And so when that day came, he was, of course, very supportive, and I appreciated that support. So understanding that you can put goals kind of on the back shelf as long as you don't lose sight of them, and wanting something. So my want to be a teacher changed but my want to get an education never changed, even through having kids. And then the perspective of, okay, how am I setting an example for my kids if I've not been to school? And what if something were to happen to my husband? Where would I be? And what would I be able to draw upon? So those were motivations as well, to get back into school and to accomplish that goal that had kind of been put on the shelf for a bit. And it's been helpful. My kids have taken their time getting their degrees, but they've all gotten their degrees. And
that's awesome.
yeah. So, but that's not just because of me, but I have to believe that that example was needed.
Oh yeah. Well, you definitely were an influence on them. Were you a first generation college
Yes.
graduate in your family? Yes.
I was.
Do you have any other siblings that went to college?
I do not.
Really?
I have a sister that went to work right out of high school. Well, actually, both of my sisters did and have worked their whole lives. Wonderful people, but that was not a part of their goal. They didn't have that goal. So yes, I was the first and the only one of my parents' children that went to school.
Oh, that is amazing. What an example. And then that just carries on to future generations. And I really do feel like when you show that is a priority and it means a lot to you, I think that speaks volumes. I really think it makes a difference in our posterity and our kids.
I believe so. I have a daughter who just graduated from Utah State University, and it only took her 20 years because she got married and had kids, not as early as I did, but did, and then went back to school and finished. So yeah, I think there's an example that needs to be set.
Consider what obtaining an education entails. Oftentimes when we think of the word, we think of school, classes, lectures, study groups, but much of Tara's education occurred outside of the classroom. Who else aside from teachers helped to educate Tara? And even yourself, really, when you relate yourself to Tara, what other things do we have that educate us besides our teachers?
Sure. Like I said before, I think our experiences educate us and give us probably a deeper knowledge and a deeper education that affects us than what we get in our formal education. Our relationships that we have with our parents, of course, and our siblings, the people that work to help us outside of our families. I think about her music teachers and those relationships that she built with people at church and other organizations that she wasn't associated a lot with, but she had brief experiences with. I think all of that helps us to question who we are and what we think and develop us into who we are becoming.
I found this one question that I thought was super interesting, that I thought this one deserves kind of thinking about. Tara's father asserts that his homeschooling can't have been that bad, considering Tara went on to do so well in her education and obtained her PhD. So yeah, I get all the credit because I'm a pretty good homeschooler.
Yeah, wasn't that big of him. Yeah.
Do you think that she succeeded academically because of him or in spite of him? Were there any lessons he imparted to her that helped her succeed academically? I thought, this is good food for thought.
Yeah. I believe it was more in spite of him than it was because of him. I think that's how he validated himself, is in saying those kinds of things. And there are many examples throughout her memoir of messages that he sent to not only her, but her siblings and to his wife and everyone else that was a part of who he was. But yeah, again, I think she is probably one of the most resilient characters that I've come in contact with, even with all of the at-risk kids that I've worked with. She just, yes, in spite of her dad, in spite of her circumstances, she overcame and became someone that she could be happy with and someone that she could live with.
It's amazing to watch her be interviewed. I was watching her and I was just expecting, I don't know, we make these judgments about people. I'm thinking she was raised in the sticks. She probably speaks funny, but she's so educated when she speaks. She seems so knowledgeable and you just hear her talk and you have these well, these people in our lives, these villains that, like her dad, where you're just like, oh my gosh, but yet you see him go through so much with the burns and everything he goes through. And same thing with her brother. Oh, what was that brother's name that abused her so badly? Oh my gosh, my mind is.
Was it?
Yeah. Was it Sean?
Sean.
Was it Sean? Where he just abused her so badly, but yet you see all the things that he went through, where he had a lot of mental health that's never addressed. Oh, do you feel like mental health is one of those big issues that we just don't talk enough about, or that we just don't work?
Yes, I think
address enough?
huge. I think it's huge when you think about her dad, because, you know, he was bipolar. So there were moments of joy that she had with him, where he was, you know, on his high, and but then extreme moments of darkness when he was at his lows. Unfortunately, those moments of darkness, I think, were either more prevalent or had such a significant influence on her that they are more prevalent in her memoir than those moments of joy that she had with him.
Yeah, well, they say negative experiences kind of just stand out more.
Yes, absolutely. In fact, I think that's from my old psychology days. I think we perseverate on those negative experiences, and one will overcome all of the joy or happiness that we feel. You know, even if we have 10 happy experiences, that one negative experience will overcome us and our emotions. So, yes, I believe that's what she was dealing with, and that bipolar mental illness that he dealt with, of course, had an effect on every single one of those children, as well as his relationship with his wife. And that is a very real thing. We see that in our classrooms. We see that in dealing with students, which goes back to what we talked about previously, the need to address those issues on a more comprehensive level, and employing social workers who can work with our kids and their families, as well as our good counselors.
You know, I thought another part of the story that I thought was super interesting was the marriage of her parents. Looking at that marriage, where you just think, how can her mom stay married to someone like this that seems so demeaning? But yet, do you feel like it, you know, a marriage is between two people. It's hard to know what's going on between the workings of a marriage, or what makes it work versus, you know, someone looking in. Do you feel like she would have been better off if her mom had just, because her mom wasn't like that. Her mom was married in and brought into that lifestyle. Do you think maybe in situations like that, it's better? I mean, I know they always say to try and make things work, but maybe you think that would have been better if she had been taken out of that, away from her family?
You know, it's hard to predict. It's hard to predict that kind of circumstance and whether it would have been better. I think the way her mother went into her own marriage, you know, she was rebelling against her family about
the rebellion.
The prim and properness of her mom. You know, do I wear cream shoes or white shoes? And who cares? That kind of attitude. And then this young man comes into her life who is so opposite of that. And it's exciting. And so, you know, we get into those relationships based on our emotions and our feelings and what we're drawn to. And she was drawn to this man who could take her away from this prim and proper upbringing, because she felt a need to rebel against that. And so I think it's hard to get into her mom's mind, because Tara doesn't really get into that.
Right. Yeah.
In the book, but it's interesting how we move toward relationships, what our motivation is, and then how we deal with that in the aftermath.
Right. So I'm just going to wrap up just this. There are so many levels to this book: isolation, religious extremism, domestic abuse, child neglect, women's rights, homeschooling, education, overcoming limitations from our birth and environment. This book encompasses it all. And I really think it's kind of a shout out that it doesn't matter what your circumstances are, you can rise above it, and you can break the chain of abuse, and you can do something else. Absolutely. And start fresh.
And I think that's what makes it so attractive. That's probably why it's been on the bestseller list for so many years.
Right. Very relatable.
It speaks to people.
It does. So I wanted to go on to a couple of different questions, just about basically what life has been like for you during COVID-19. What has your job been like with all this going on? For you, like historic? It's
been crazy. As you mentioned, I think earlier, none of us could have ever would have ever thought that we would be in these circumstances. I know our educators never thought that they didn't go into education so they could teach from home or remotely. They like making connections, personal, and building personal relationships. I think it's the same for any of us that choose this path of being an educator. That's what makes this exciting and fun for us. So taking that connected element out is challenging for no matter what level you are in the system, whether you're a paraprofessional or working in the lunchroom or a custodian. They all enjoy being around kids. We all do. And so that's been, I think, probably one of the most challenging elements of what we've been dealing with. And then it's changing so quickly. You know, we went from an announcement that I think, you know, things are ramping up here, and so be prepared, to 3 days later saying the governor just announced that we're going to cancel school. You'll have 2 days to prepare for your remote instruction, and then the next day you're online with kids.
You're like, these government workers have never worked with kids.
Exactly. So I think, of course, resiliency has played a big part in that. Yes. And adaptability. And at the core of why our educators became educators is what has allowed them to be resilient and to overcome and to adapt, is that wanting to remain connected to kids. And okay, now what is my responsibility in order to continue to educate and continue to remain connected? I don't know, I may have gotten off the path there with that answer.
No, that's fantastic. Do you think the school schedule will ever recover? And do you think we'll be going back to our normal lives? Like, are we ever going to be able to send our kids back to school again?
The answer is yes.
Yes.
yes, we will. The hard thing is it's not under our control. You know, it's the health department and the governor that they're calling the shots. And I know they're calling the shots based on data and based on what's best for our state and our communities. But that makes it difficult when those elements are taken out of your control. So all we can do is plan and prepare and predict as best we can.
Be on the fly, be ready for whatever.
Exactly. So we're in orange right now. When we get to move to yellow, then we'll be able to have kids back in our schools, but it won't be the same. It'll be different. You know, we won't be able to have more than 50 people in one gathering spot at once. Having kids 6 feet apart. I don't know if you've been in any of our classrooms.
Yeah, they're not 6 feet apart.
They're not. And there's no way we can have 20 to 30 kids in one classroom 6 feet apart. So what kinds of things are we going to have to do? How are we going to adapt our current environment to those new requirements for educating? So that's what we're dealing with right now, as well as recovery. So what is summer school going to look like so that we can help fill in the gaps in learning that we need to?
That's right, summer school. So I have another question with that. If we go back to school in August, does it have to be the whole state, or is it possible to have certain counties go back to school? How does that work? Is it a state thing or is it a county thing?
It's a state thing. So that's the way it's been from the beginning, is that whatever we do will be as a state. You know, Beaver County has had zero. They've had no cases of the flu.
Oh, wow. Good job, Beaver County.
Exactly. But they've been under the same mandates and directives that the rest of us have. We've had, when you look at per capita, the amount of cases we've had in Iron County, it's been low. However, we will remain in the same cautionary, having to follow the same cautionary measures that everybody in Salt Lake, where cases have been higher and population is greater. And in a way that's it's a little bit comforting knowing that we're doing that together, and whatever's happening in Iron County is happening in Salt Lake County, and our kids are following under the same mandates and directives. Anyway, there's goods and bads to that. I know our county commissioners and mayor have petitioned the governor to move us to a yellow state because of our fewer cases, and that was denied recently. And I think it's the governor's wish that we all stay in the same place.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. Yeah. I'm going to be going over to some of the question and answers that have been put in the chat.
Sure.
Camilla asked, can you talk more about how you build better communities by building better classroom ambience?
Wow, that's a really great question, Camilla. I think the environment within a classroom makes all the difference. I've seen that as I've been in and out of many classrooms within the Iron County School District. That environment, that ambiance, and we know it's more than just the decorations on the wall. We know that it's more than the physical appearance, but the physical appearance is critical to learning. And so we're always asking teachers to consider that in their practice. How are you making sure that your students feel welcome every day as they come into that classroom by the things that you say and do, as well as the physical environment that's present?
Going to just wrapping up on some of these other questions, Shannon. What suggestions do you have right now on things that we can do as a family to help with educating our children through the summer? What are some things that we can do, whether we go back to school during August or not? Are there going to be things that you feel like would really help with our kids in our education?
Absolutely, and it's the same things that we always promote as we leave the spring semester and then go into summer, knowing that we're going to have 8 to 10, 12 weeks where students aren't going to be in the classroom. Reading is critical, and I know our parents know that. Reading to your children, have them read to you, and making that a daily practice. Just participating in outside activities and being present for your kids, I think helps to contribute to their well-being, that then allows for learning to take place. I know what we're going to be doing some assessments with our kiddos before the end of the school year to see where the gaps are. And then we will be offering some summer opportunities for those students who show that there are gaps in their learning that need to be covered. And our good teachers, many of them are not volunteering. Hopefully, we will be paying them for their services, but they are willing to take their summers to help with summer school as well. So we'll be.
Are there ways to find out about some of these things? Are there places that we can look online or that they're offered?
I think continue communicating with the teachers as well as the administrators at each school, and know that this is a work in progress. We're still getting information. We're still getting funding allocations to help with this. And so know that over especially the next 2 weeks, we'll be making determinations about summer and what that's going to look like, as well as thinking forward to the fall, whether we're in yellow or if we're in green, where we can come back to a fairly normal environment, but employing some of the things we've learned about sanitation and hand washing and germs and all of that, and employing those in our classrooms.
Good. Shannon, in wrapping up, do you have any suggestions for any reads or anything you've been doing to keep yourself entertained during this time? Anything good that sticks out for you?
Well, I think going back to that reading, I think taking time for ourselves is critical. Reading, getting out and doing things with family and friends is critical. Doing the things that you love. For me, playing the piano, relaxing with a ball of yarn and a crochet hook. Just whatever the things are that bring us joy, and being aware of what brings our kids joy, and helping them to find that as well. As parents, I think that's a part of what we do as well. So taking care of ourselves so we can take care of our families.
Oh, well, that sounds fantastic. Shannon, thank you so much for joining us today on Community Reads. It has been a pleasure talking to you today and discussing this. It's been wonderful. So thanks for tuning in today for Community Reads. Join us every Tuesday at 2 as we interview authors and community leaders as they share with us their favorite reads. Check out our site, suu.edu/keeplearning.com for a complete list of our upcoming guests. The next 3 Wednesdays at 4 o'clock, I will be doing a special segment for our business and leadership segment of Community Reads. So tune in for that. I will be interviewing State Legislature Mike Winder and the Dean of SUU, Mary Pearson. Our first interview will be tomorrow with author, State Legislature, and Vice President of Government Affairs at Rocky Mountain Power, John Cox. So tune in for that. That should be great. And we will be discussing his book, Utah Politics. Until next time, take some downtime and read a good book. Thanks, everybody.
And from all of us here at SUU Community Education, we hope you enjoyed learning something new today. You can watch this recording and all of our recordings, lessons on Zumba, blueberry pancakes, everything at our website, suu.edu/keeplearning, or follow our YouTube channel at SUU Community Education. Thank you all for joining today, and we hope you have a great day.